Hi everyone, I'm Jay here from Jade Productions, and this video is part of the new starting an army for Age of Sigmar. I've been following Age of Sigmar since its general handbook first one came out. I've been playing for quite some time. I've put together 2 armies now. I have studied it relentlessly. I've applied basically all my knowledge and learnt the system really well to be able to give it breakdowns and analysis. Typically, what happens when most people I know go to tournaments, because I'm doing law stuff at university and work, and typically I can't go to as many tournaments as I want. Many people that I know, particularly my friends, actually send me the lists of who's participating in the tournament, what lists they're bringing, and I provide sort of breakdowns, and they're typically very on point. I've had a lot of good feedback about this, and I just wanted to start this series talking about and encouraging people how to start Age of Sigmar armies, but not just, say, here's the get starting box, here, you should start it, but more go delve into it. Here's how you should start it, why you should start it this way, and different ways depending on what you're really wanting out of an army. Because Age of Sigmar, I definitely think is somewhat, despite being the system where they test a lot more mechanics that would later go into 40k, is actually really, really far more polished. And despite many people's claims of, yes, every new book creates a creep in power level, it's actually only really minor. The only army I think in the past 2 years that is particularly overwhelming is Hedonites of Slaanesh. And even then, the great thing about Age of Sigmar compared to 40k is that there's no Imperial Knights. There's no one big army that you're going to see that will absolutely truffle stomp you unless you've brought the same thing. Because in Sigmar, everything that you have can threaten yourself. So the really powerful armies are either ones that don't care about your defenses and have enough dice, or the ones that are really, really defensive, such as Fyreslayers. Now in this video, we're going to be talking about starting a Stormcast army. And we're going to be talking about a couple ways to do it, based on what you want to do. So when you look at the Stormcast, you see that they're exceptionally average and all-rounded. They're very much the Space Marines of the Age of Sigmar setting, except they're not, which makes them, and they have far more personality, and they're real living humans that are deceased and can go back to their old lives and have thoughts and feelings and individual personalities and go on their own little adventures, and thus essentially far, far, far cooler if you ignore the lightning theme and all that kind of weird Valkyrie Nordic jazz and some of the sillier stuff that Games Workshop has written. So when you start with particularly Stormcast Eternals, something you need to bear in mind is that Stormcast Eternals are 3 armies. There are 3 distinct playstyles and armies within the Stormcast book. There's your Sacrosanct, your Redeemers, and your... they are called... Man... The... Damn it, I know it. I lost it. The Vanguard. Thank you. The Vanguard. There's your Vanguard, your Sacrosanct, and your Redeemers. So, one of the easiest ways to sort of start your Stormcast army is to basically pick one. Pick one to be the core. You can expand out later, but typically the synergies between your army work best when you pick one of these and focus in on it, as tends to be the case with most armies. I find the best way is typically for armies that aren't like the Stormcast Eternals, is to sort of pick a theme and build around it. Now, your Stormcast Eternals are pretty alright in any of the builds. So, your Redeemers are your all-rounders. They can do a bit of everything. They're outshined in the shooting department by the Vanguard, and they're definitely outshined in the defensive magic area, and just the magic area in general, by the Sacrosanct. But your Redeemers can also hit really, really hard. And they're also the cheapest. Not in terms of money, but also in terms of money, but mostly points. They're also some of the easiest ones to get your hands on, besides from the Sacrosanct. Now, there's a fourth way to build Stormcast. If you want something a little different, if you still want Stormcast as your army, but you also want to use a City of Sigmar, there's options there, and I'll explore that at the end of this video. So let's look at what the Stormcast really have available for you. So when you go to the Stormcast Eternals and you go to select one of these armies, the easiest thing to look at is definitely what you can buy really quickly and really easily if you want to go that route, if you're looking for it to be really cheap. You go to the Get Started boxes, obviously, or the Soul Wars box, depending on what you want. So you've got two different start collecting boxes, and then you have Soul Wars for if you want Sacrosanct. So you have the Stormcast Vanguard, which is if you want to play the Vanguard. It's alright as far as a Get Starting box goes. It's actually really good if you want to build an all Vanguard army. If you want to get to 2,000 points really, really quickly. It gives you 5 of your mandatory battle line, which are your Vanguard hunters. It gives you your Paladors, which are, despite what they look, they're not a skirmish cav. They are actually quite a very fast, heavy cav. It gives you an Aquila, a Lord Aquila, who's a great commander, who's got lots of synergy. And then it gives you some Gryph-hounds, which are, if you want to run an all-cavalry Vanguard list, are a fantastic screen. Otherwise, they're pretty useless in your Vanguard list, and pretty useless in general. They actually gel better with the Redeemers. Now, the Thunderstrike Brotherhood is probably the best way to go if you want to start Redeemers. The issue with it is you should probably get... The issue is with they kind of jib you in that box in terms of the Paladins of your army, which are your elite forces, with the Retributors, since you only get 3 and they're in squad 5, which means you're forced to buy 2 of them just to get a full box of that, compared to the Vanguard one, where you get to... The only thing you're sort of jibbed on in terms of you can't field a full unit of straight away is the Gryph-hounds, which we don't really care about anyway. So, your Stormcast Eternals, looking first and foremost at the Thunderstrike Brotherhood Get Starting box. It's an okay place to start. It gives you 10 Liberators. It gives you the 3 guys with wings. It gives you, which is a full squad of them, Prosecutors. Gives you 3 Prosecutors. It gives you a Lord Celestant, a Lord Relictor. Lord Celestant is on a Dracoth, so he's mounted. Slightly expensive choice, definitely worth it. Probably definitely better than the Lord Celestant on foot, in my opinion. And then 3 Retributors. And those can give you a base to build around. Or you can go straight to Soul Wars, which is very, very pricey. But so is a lot of the newer stuff for the definite Sacrosanct Stormcast Eternals. So, if you're building the Redeemers, you definitely want the core of your army. Your army's going to include a lot of heroes, but your core is essentially going to be some Liberators, 2 units of Liberators. That's what you're going to need minimum. Now, the Liberators are interesting. They've got some options. You can deck them out how you want. Give one of them a big hammer or a big sword. The swords hit better and wound worse. The hammers hit worse, wound better. I personally think the shield is always the go-to. You definitely always want that shield on your Liberators. And that's what you're going to need. You're going to need 2 units of those minimum They come in their minimum 10-man squads. They're 2 wounds apiece, 4-up saves, 5-inch movement, which is not bad by Sigmar standards. They're surprisingly durable. They'll still die, they're still your basic frontline infantry, but your frontline infantry are the equivalent of a unit of 20 lesser infantry, which is not bad. Now, your paladins come in 3 different flavors. They come in retributors, they come in decimators, and then they come in protectors. Now, depending on what you want to go with them, the retributors are really cool, really basic. They just hit really, really hard with giant hammers. Protectors are for killing monsters efficiently, and sort of they're okay at deflecting. They're made for killing monsters. And then the decimators are made for killing infantry. And I definitely recommend having a squad of each if you want to build the Redeemers. Those are your staples. They are fantastic. You can build your lists around them and your 2 Liberator squads that you have to have, minimum. You can... And I would definitely... And if you want less Liberators and you want something more to support, if you want to focus more on and bring more of your Paladin, Retributors, Decimators, Protectors, you go the Judicators for part of your battle line, which are your Bowmen. As far as Bowmen go, they're okay. They're not the best shooting in the game. They're not the worst shooting in the game. They're pretty reliable. And you should probably always go with the bows unless you've got a vision in your mind for the crossbows. And that's that when it comes to the Redeemers. The next part of the Redeemers is your characters. The Redeemers are... These are the ground troops. These are the all-purpose grunts, and as well as the people who protect cities and fortifications. And the important thing about making them work for your Stormcast Eternals is your characters. So your Lord Celestant is important for his command ability, and just for being a cav that can move rather quickly and give that command ability. The Knight Heralder is really important for Redeemers, more important for Vanguard. But he's got great abilities. Your key thing you're going to struggle with when it comes to Stormcast Eternals is picking your characters. And the key is not to overload. You really need to focus in on which one are you building, Sacrosanct, Redeemers, Vanguard, and focus in on those characters. Because you can, 2,000 point list, you can only have 6 of them. Any that are on dragons are going to eat into your behemoth slots, which means less dragons, which you really don't care about. Because if you're taking more than 3, you're a madman and or really, really confident. Which is awesome. Because everyone would love you. But the dragons are a fun thing. If you're leaning into the Sacrosanct, your characters are very much your mages. If you're leading into the Redeemers, they're your banner bearers, they're your priests, they're the occasional mage, which are required to really make your army work. You're going to need at least 1 mage, 1 wizard, in every one of them, no matter which one you pick. So you're going to need a Lord Exorcist, or a... They are the Lord Arcanum. You're going to need a Lord Arcanum for no matter which one you build, you're going to need at least 1 of those. So that's that, simply put. Your army is better off with magic than it is better off with magic than it is without it. Simply because other armies of magic, at the very least, while your spells are awesome, particularly your empowering spells that give buffs rather than your Lore of Lightning, which deals a lot of damage, your buff spells are definitely worth it. You've got 3 choices. and your Dispel Scroll and the ability to just dispel other people's spells and stop them from casting is really good. So you're probably going to need one of them, no matter which one you build, just to reinforce that point. When you're building Redeemers, you've got your basic Troops of the Ground, which is most of your army. You can build that way if you want a big horde of, marching in lockstep, marching forward, fighting in ranks, nice ordered battle lines. You have your Redeemers. You have your Liberators out forward, taking the hits, re-rolling their saves. You're bringing in your Paladins of their various shapes and sizes to deal with specialized threats. You're supporting them from range with your Judicators raining down arrows to skirmish fire enemies, and then you're using the occasional wizard just to buff your guys and your other characters to support as well. A particular note is the Lord Relictor, who's great for his prayers of healing. The Lord Celestant, who gives the rerolls or -1, who has his lantern. Your Castellant. Sorry, it's Celestant that's on the Dracoth. The Castellant has the lantern. And the Heralder, who lets you reroll charges and make terrain explode with his giant horn. That should be essentially your core of the Redeemer army, just to simplify what the Redeemers are. And from there, you can expand out and throw in some more sacrosanct things, such as the different kinds of cavalry. The ones that definitely gel better with the Redeemers are your Dragon cavalry on your Dracoths, your Fulminators, Concussors, and Tempestors. Of those, the Fulminators are the ones if you want to be very aggressive, cavalry charging. Your Concussors are the all-rounders, and the Tempestors are trying to be Vanguard, but they're not really Vanguard, so enjoy if you really want them. But they're there. And then you can bring in those cavalry, and then you combine all of that with your prosecutors, your winged units. Your Knight Venator is a very good assassin. Your prosecutors are your way of really moving around the battlefield, taking fight, and sort of doing a closer skirmish. And they combo really well with the Redeemers in a certain battalion. Particularly the battalion where you bring the unit of Paladins. So you can get some good things to do that. Redeemers is where the vast majority of the army is, and it's also where you have the most options. And what's cool about that is you can definitely pull from it and go, okay, I see this theme of here's my army from this from the realm of metal. They do a lot of flying, therefore they've got a lot of prosecutors. They've got Tempestors. They've got a lot of Judicators, and they're very shooty focused with holding the line, or they do a lot of deep striking. You can go with here's a very elite army marching in lockstep, ordered battle line. You can go with here the defenders of a city and build around that. Of course, if you're going with here's the defenders of a city, that's a great opportunity to go and build cities of Sigmar, which lets you use normal humans as your battle line and bring in your really powerful Dracoth cavalry and your really powerful Paladin units and your heroes to really hit home as well in some really interesting combinations. So one of the best ways to do that is to definitely come down with a theme. Now, the stuff about the Redeemers to be wary of is, again, it's character overload and not all of them are good. Some of them just won't gel with what you're doing. The Lord Veritant is very outdated in terms of his role. He's not fantastic. Now that you have access to proper wizards. His abilities are kind of... well... he's an anti-wizard, non-wizard, who can also dispel and has his personal Gryph-hound, and his combat's sort of okay with 4 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1, 2 damage, and pretty good Stormcast character stats. All your characters are pretty fantastic stats. But unless your army is very much themed around Protectors of the City, where the Veritant sort of operates, and you're going with some whole, he's a witch hunter, this is your city sort of thing, he's very much not worth it in the least. He's one of those very redundant characters. The Night Questers, very redundant. You really don't need them when you can be investing in elsewhere. They are kind of just points fillers. And that's really it when it comes to that. You got to be aware of certain characters are redundant based on what you need. The Knight Azeros is really cool. He might not fit the greatest in the Redeemers in particular. He might fit better with your list for Sacrosanct. He might fit better with your Vanguard. The Knight Veritant, he fits everywhere pretty well, but it's a matter of course, obviously, those two combo better with Prosecutors, obviously. The Celestant Prime definitely goes better with Redeemers. Flat out, he goes better with the Redeemers, and he goes better with a Sacrosanct. Now, the Redeemers are not the most competitive thing if you want to build for that in mind, and you're starting them up with the idea of you want to do really, really well at tournaments. The Redeemers are not the competitive option. They're the fun narrative option that performs well, does average, and there's a lot of room to master them. Now we'll talk about the Vanguard, and the Vanguard are the other way you can do it. The Vanguard have less character bloat than the Redeemers. There's only 4 characters that you're really after. The Lord Aquila, your Lord Arcanum on Gryph Charger, who, while doesn't combo well in terms of synergy, combos well aesthetically as well as giving magic to the Vanguard, who desperately really need it. And the Gryph Charger gives it that maneuverability, as well as that healing that desperately is needed by the Vanguard as well. The Knight Azeros and the Knight Venator work definitely better as well in the Vanguard in particular. While you don't particularly want to bring Prosecutors when you're building the Vanguard, the Knights are okay in there because of their rerolls and their ability to mark targets and their lanterns and that. And they're just generally okay, and the Venator is just a pretty good assassin. The easiest way is to very much get the Get Starting box and get 3 of it. Now, you will never need 3 Lord Aquilas. You might need 2, depending on the size of your list, the size of your army that you're going for. You'll definitely need 1. The Vanguard, however, unlike your Redeemer Liberators, where you want to run them in big squads, you want them to tank damage, the Vanguard are all about outmaneuvering and shooting and then striking very swiftly and running away. As such, your very slow battle line, which are your Vanguard Hunters with their pistols and swords and axes, same sort of deal as the hammers and swords from the Liberators, they're good at outflanking, and that's where you want them to be. You don't actually want them to start on the board. You don't want them in big squads either, because they suck up points that you probably want to put elsewhere. In fact, you very much want to put them elsewhere in terms of your Vanguard Raptors, who are along with the Vanguard Paladors, the bread and butter of Vanguard. The Vanguard are very tiny. You don't have a lot of options, which makes it very nice and easy for people who want a very easy Stormcast army to build and paint. Since it has low models, it's very easy to collect. You only have to buy a few things. Your army's going to be small, and your army's going to have a very simple focus. But at the same time, the Vanguard is also going to be harder to learn and harder to play as you get used to it, because they play in a way that's atypical of Age of Sigmar. In Age of Sigmar, it's all about using your movement, carefully maneuvering past, slingshotting through enemies, picking how you charge, when you charge, and that. The Vanguard do that in a much more extreme way, but with a focus on shooting. Shooting in this game, in Age of Sigmar, is the atypical way to play. Whereas in 40k, melee is the atypical way to play. Because in 40k, everyone has a gun, not everyone's a master swordsman. In this, everyone's got a sword, not everyone's got a bow and or gun. So, you've got that sort of thing there. Now, the best thing about the Vanguard is you have those options to move your guys around, put them in places. You have range, which makes you really great at shooting. Now, but your basic guys, the hunters, are not great at anything. They're okay at shooting. They don't have a fantastic number of shots, nor a fantastic range with only 9-inch. Their melee is what you expect from a Liberator. Their biggest strength is that you can hold them back and then bring them on at the board edges. And this lets you get to all sorts of places that your opponent really doesn't want you to get. It means you don't have to march across the board, you can come in closer. And in Sigmar, being able to get places on the board is how you win games. While they're doing that, your Vanguard Hunters, your long strike crossbowmen, which you're going to want at least 2 of, trust me, they're fantastic. They're great for killing enemy monsters and characters, which monsters are a threat if they can get close enough, but your great way to deal with them in Sigmar is to wear them down to the point of uselessness. Many armies are super character reliant, so being able to pick them off with your long strike crossbows is essential. Many armies just fail to operate without their characters. Legions of Nagash, Gloom Spites, Fire Slayers, Skaven, all of them. Many armies fail to operate well without their characters. They are the thing that binds most armies together. Whereas you, as the Stormcast, you're not super bound by that, particularly when you're the Vanguard, especially if you're the Vanguard. And the Sacrosanct. Those two, the Redeemers to an extent, don't really require characters to do well. You sort of just do your thing and they make you do it slightly better, but you're not hopeless without them. Without them, your whole army's not going to crumble. Now, your Vanguard Hunters with long strike bows are what you use to pick apart your enemy's synergies. The Hurricane Crossbows are what you use when you want to destroy their enemy's hordes, which is the number one weakness of particularly the Stormcast Eternals, is numbers. And hordes in Age of Sigmar are the thing that cause the most trouble. You have them, they are huge blocks of 20 plus wounds, 30 wounds, 60 wounds for grots, 40 wounds, skeletons. Sometimes they come back or regenerate. They get huge buffs. They're ridiculously cheap for what they do. And the only way to carve through them, despite their weak stats, is sheer number of dice. And as the Vanguard, that's what you want to be using against them. As the Redeemers, you want to be using Decimators against them. Lots and lots of Decimators. But as a primary shooting for the Vanguard, that's where your power comes from. The rest of the Vanguard power is expressed by the Paladors. And which is the number one reason why the Get Starting box is such a steal for the Vanguard and such an easy way to get them up. You want as many Paladors as you can fit in the Vanguard lists. You want them more than you want the Hunters, but you want them equally in the same amount as the Vanguard Raptors. The Raptors tear your enemy army apart from range. The Vanguard Paladors skirmish them and then deliver the final hard-hitting blow before darting away, while your Hunters just sort of sit on objectives, occasionally charging something or giving the occasional pot shot. If you really want to be fancy, your Gryph-hounds sort of screen, and then your characters focus on keeping your Paladors alive and functioning. And the Knight Venator helps make your long strikes more accurate. But most things in the Vanguard are geared towards making your Paladors work better. And Paladors are really, really good, but really expensive points-wise and money-wise, which is why that box is such a great way to grab them. And the reason why the Lord Arcanum on Gryph Charger is so important to the Vanguard and why you should get one if you want to build Vanguard is that the Palador is really, really fast, and the Gryph Charger Lord Arcanum is the best way to keep up with them. Now, the Sacrosanct. The Sacrosanct is what you want to build if you want to win. And win with regularity. They're also the army you build if you envision a super magical arcane army of wizards and priests using magic sciences and lots of wizardry stuff to overcome enemies. They're definitely by far the best and most overpowered army of the 3 Stormcast armies that are available to you in the Stormcast Eternals line. Your basic units, the Secretors, which are battle line if your general is from the Sacrosanct. They are better than the Liberators, and they are far better than the Hunters. They have numbers, and they hit far harder than the Hunters, and they are far more defensive than the Liberators. The Evocators that you have available to you are a 4th kind of Paladin. They're your magic Paladins, essentially, and they're good at dealing with everything. They are the middle line. They don't deal huge number of... Actually, allow me to restate that. They're not good at dealing with everything. Your big, heavy infantry, in terms of Paladins, your big, heavy infantry threats, you want your Retributors and their 2 damage hammers to deal with, and their mortal wounds on 6s. The monsters, you want Protectors to deal with. Infantry blobs, you want Decimators to deal with. Elite infantry and high number elite infantry, you want Evocators to deal with. Now, if you want your Evocators to be on a cavalry unit, you stick them on the Celestial Lions, whatever they are called now. I forget what they are called. The Dumb Lions, which... Yep, your Draco Dracoliths, Dracolions, something. Ah, man. I can't seem to find it. I'm looking at my book and I can't seem to see them. They're in here. Anyway, you can stick them on there. They become very expensive and nowhere near as effective as the ones on foot. But you get speed and mobility out of them. They're okay. If you're looking to build into the Sacrosanct for the first time, and you're looking to build exclusively Sacrosanct, the Draco Lions are not worth it. You should build into them much later. They're not something you should focus on. Okay, when I build my army, I need to get them first. No. What you're going to need when you're building these guys first is Sequitors. Big units of Sequitors. Minimum 2 units of Sequitors. Then you're going to need your choice of mage. Then you're going to need Evocators. Evocators are the bread and butter. Then you're going to want Ballista. Now the Sacrosanct bring the Ballista, which belongs more in Sacrosanct and more in Redeemers than it does in Vanguard. You can mix and match all of these. The synergy's not always going to be there. Obviously, the more you stick to one, the more synergy you're going to have. But the best part about it is, with Stormcast, you have so much variety that you can expand out. Now, you can expand out in many different ways. The Celestar Ballista is the best way to expand out if you're starting with Redeemers, and you want to play that step lock battle line where your Redeemers advance inexorably into the enemy, and you fight those really cool medieval battles without super amounts of magic. You can use the Ballistas to spray out lots more missile fire with your Judicators. In the Evocators, you can use them in the same way. You're just being far more defensive in terms of it. The Sacrosanct is very much Sequitors form an unbreakable shield. They're really hard to dislodge, and your Evocators kind of kill everything that the Sequitors can't. And that's really all your list needs to be when it comes to them. Those are the things you need to focus on, because then you need to get your Sacrosanct characters, which are your mages. You want lots of mages for the Sacrosanct. You want at least 3. 3 mages, yep. You want at least 1 Lord Arcanum, and you want at least 1 Lord... Lord Exorcist? Lord Exorcist is kind of okay. The other mage character. Because the Lord Exorcist... Yeah, your Lord Exorcist is a wizard. There's the other wizard you can get, which comes in the Soul Wars, is very good. And you want 3 wizards. You want a Lord Arcanum. You want the one on foot as well. And from there, yeah. The Knight Incanter is the one I'm thinking of. You want the Knight Incanter. You want them probably more over you actually want the Knight Incanter more than you want the Lord Exorcist. So everything I said about the Lord Exorcist, replace that with the Knight Incanter. You want the Knight Incanter. It's better at spellcasting in every way. It's what you want. And then you want a Lord Arcanum. And you probably want to make it your general so you can get those Sequitors, if you're building full Sacrosanct. And then from there, you expand out into your army with the Sacrosanct. You add in your Dracoliths, you Taurolines if you really want, but which are exclusive to characters. And you get your other things in order to support the thing that the Sacrosanct do really well, and that's magic and not dying. And that's the crux of how you start those 3. And now we're going to go a little bit further. Well, you have your one that you want to build, you have your theme. Now we go and we talk about how to get the most out of each of those. Now, one of the coolest things, of course, and one of the most important things will be, do you pick a storm host? Now, certain storm hosts go better with certain builds, as it were. The Hallowed Knights go better with the Redeemers, and are actually better at not bringing wizards to support them. The Celestial Vindicators are very good at bringing Redeemers. They're also very good at bringing all of them. They make you hit much harder. The Hammers of Sigmar are your general all-rounders, kind of if you don't particularly care and you just want some of their abilities. Their biggest benefit of the Hammers of Sigmar is the ability to spend a CP to recycle a Redeemer squad, which does include Sequitors, technically, since they have both keywords. And bringing back a squad of Sequitors that's died, a huge squad of 20 Sequitors, that would annoy anyone. Your Anvils of Helden Hammer are okay. They're not particularly great. Your Knight Excelsior are definitely one that work best with Sacrosanct by far, making your killy evocators even more crazy killy, along with your celestial your ballista. Your Celestial Warbringers are fantastic with the Vanguard. Being able to set up your guys again to play games of cat and mouse and mind games and bait enemies in. They're also pretty good with the Sacrosanct, which is more where they're meant to be used. They definitely work better with the Sacrosanct if you're bringing them, but they can work with the Vanguard. The Vanguard typically work best with Knight Excelsior or Celestial Vindicators and the Astral Templars. But the Tempest Lords, they work good with the Tempest Lords work better with the Sacrosanct and with the Redeemers. The Astral Templars, they work pretty well with all of them. Probably more so the Vanguard, and definitely more so the Redeemers. Not so much the Sacrosanct. But they all have options and potentials which you can keep in mind when you're building around this. If you want to build a really big dragon list, the Hallowed Knights, to be able to ignore spells which are a huge threat to your dragons, is pretty good. Celestial Vindicators with a list of all dragons is particularly good, letting you get those rerolls to hit when you charge, which you want to be charging as a dragon cavalry list. It is all about hitting particularly hard. Hammers of Sigmar is if you really want to do that lockstep and have lots of guys in the field with a big army. The Anvils of Helden Hammer are sort of the same. The Knights Excelsior are definitely better for the Sacrosanct. Like if you want to build something that's very focused on getting the best out of evocators. Celestial Warbringers are fun for wizard-centric combat armies, but you've got better options for that. The Tempest Lords are a fun thing if you want to be very tactical and generate lots of command points and use lots of that and be sort of like, here, I'm going to outsmart you. It's very hero-centric army if you want to take advantage of your huge selection of hero units. Or you can dissuade all of that and you can build yourself around your own particular one where you're not restricted by some of those, depending on what you have in mind. The Stormcast are definitely the most versatile. You've got lots of artifacts, you've got command traits, you've got prayers. all your different mounts have different mount trait options, 3 for each one. You've got the Law of Invigoration, which is easily much better than the Law of the Storm, simply because your guys are good, you just want to be buffing them already. Your Endless Spells. Okay, quick effigy on Endless Spells for the Stormcast. As I'm here, I'm reading it, we'll go through it. Your Endless Spells for these guys, it goes one of two ways. They're either not worth it, and you don't have to rush out and buy them. They're not essential to you getting started. They're not something you have to buy at the beginning and have on hand. They're not that important to your army. That being said, you can pick them up later, and they will be useful. The Dias Arcanum, pretty good, making your Knight Invocator faster. The Celestial Vortex is meh. I particularly wouldn't go for it compared to the Everblaze Comet, which is particularly nasty when you plant it on the center of the battlefield or on an objective and you just go, this is a no-go zone. You don't go here unless you want to get hurt, which means you have to fight me where I want you to. Which is the whole point of Sigmar in dictating where things fight and how they fight. Now, you don't have to go out and get them straight away. You can live without your endless spells. You can't really live without a wizard and when you do have your wizard, pick the Law of Invigoration. It's much better. The -1 bravery is not great, but the adding 1 to melee wound rolls and re-rolling charges is, well, you want them. You want them a lot. Name characters. Okay, we'll talk about name characters a little bit. Grab them if you really like them. If you like their lore, they typically don't bring anything except for locking you into building a certain way with a certain thing. Asteria Soulblight is a magic user on a Dracoline. Here we go, Dracoline. Finally found it. Not much different to how you would use a regular Lord Arcanum on Dracoline or just a regular Lord Arcanum. It's there, you use it. She's Hammers of Sigmar, so you're stuck with that if you want to get the most out of her. So it kind of dictates that you're now, okay, if you want to bring her, you want to make her your general, you want to do that, well, okay. Now you're building Asteria Soulblight as your general, you're going to grab another wizard, you're going to grab some Sequitors, you're going to be Hammers of Sigmar, you're going to make that a big unit of Sequitors, probably two big units of 20 Sequitors, some Evocators, maybe some Evocators on Dracolines to run around with her, and then some Celestia Balissae to just sit in the back and fire off stuff while she runs around doing magic things, while the rest of your kind of brick just holds the line and you do a hammer and anvil sort of thing. Right there, easy thing. Not many models needed with Age of Sigmar, that's a great thing. You can buy less with it. You can buy less and get more bang for your buck when it comes to Age of Sigmar compared to 40k. Aventus Firestrike, same sort of thing. Now dictates that you're doing Hammers of Sigmar, you're doing something different though. You're probably going to focus much more on well, sort of just being an anvil when it comes for Aventus Firestrike. The Celestant Prime. He goes good in everything. You can include him in anything. He's fantastic. If you want to build an army around him, the best way to do it is to focus on a mixture of Sacrosanct and Redeemers, and bring lots of Paladins. Fill with cheap Sequitors, then some Balistae, and then bring lots and lots of Paladins. Might be slow. Most of them you want to be dropping down with him. And then you just kind of do a good old Terminator deep strike. As if you were doing 40k. You bring your guys into where your enemy doesn't want them, or right in front of them. You charge them in. You wreck their face and you break them in a single round. Is the general idea. With a super elite force. He can do that. Celestin Prime is really good in that he fits in everything. You can build super defensive if you needed to. But he hits like a ton of truck. He hits like a ton of trucks. And if you keep him in reserve, he hits even harder. There are few things that are actually gonna really kick his butt right now in terms of the meta. Celestin Prime's great. He's just really expensive, so expect your army to be really small and elite in accordance. Vander's Hammerhand is just if you wanted to name Lord Celestant and be locked into the Hammerhands because you like them. Neve Black Talon is great for the Vanguard, but is also kind of mediocre. If you have room for points, the Black Talon and the generic version of Neve Black Talon are okay. The Knight Zephyr. Other named characters are not really important. And then there's a huge number of ways to build this. If you want to build an old dragon cavalry list, sadly you have to take some sort of tax. And that's the most important thing to understand with the Stormcast. There's always a battle line tax, and they're not as versatile in that. You can't have an old dragon list where it's nothing but Dracoths on cavalry Dracoths, and then the large Star Drakes leading them, or just big Dracoth lists, or all Star Drake lists. You can't do it, sadly, not in matched play. Still a very cool theme. You just gotta think around acknowledging what it is you need. And the easiest way to do that is to go, alright, if I want to build that old Dracoth list, I want to make my Dracoth the general, I want to have as many Dracoths as possible. What is the tax I need to have on that? Well, if he's my general, my battle line has to be either Judicators, or it has to be Liberators. Alright, if it's an all-cavalry list, Judicators are probably better, just to give you some extra range support, since you want the rest of your big cavalry army charging forward in a heroic charge. Same with the Lord Celestant on Star Drake, and you want to field as many Star Drakes as possible, which are somewhat overpriced, but still very fun. That kind of thing, right? Now, it's very easy to get lost when building these, but they're also by far the easiest. In G-Dubs, Games Workshop very much support you when it comes to this. Lord Ordinators are fantastic when it comes to if you want to build a huge artillery list. If you want to go Sacrosanct and have an immovable blob or two, and then just have as much artillery and shooting as possible, you bring in some Vanguard Raptors, you bring in Judicators, you bring in your Celestin Ballistas, and then you just protect them with Sequitors, and led by a Lord Arcanum. Away you go. There are many, many different ways to play them. So when it comes to starting with them, the number one thing you need to know is plan your heroes out ahead of time. The ones you definitely need for what you're building towards. And then acknowledge the tax that you have to take for your battle line and buy the minimum of that. The final step for getting started, if you want to take it one step further and take it one giant step further, and you want to build your army towards, you might decide to build your army towards a battalion or a series of battalions. You just do this the same way, and you look at what's best for what you want to run. If your idea is to build a huge shooty list, the Hailstorm Battery is a good thing to build towards. It's nice, it's cheap, it's simple. It leaves room for expansion. Your Grand Convocation, if you're already going Wizard Heavy, and you know you're going Wizard Heavy, it's something to build towards. You need a Lord Arcanum, which you will want it anyway. You need 2+ Knight Incanters, which you'll have wanted anyway. And then an extra Lord Exorcist. And now all of a sudden, your model's wholly within 2 other of the models from that battalion. From that War Scroll battalion. Get +1 to their casting rolls. Fantastic. Means you can dip a bit more into the better lore of the Storm spells. But it also means your Lore of Invigoration spells are going to go off really easy. And be that much harder to dispel. Or unbind, rather. The Soulstrike Brotherhood is definitely a good example of a mixed sort of shooting formation. It's, in my opinion, is actually not the best. But hey, Thunderstrike Brotherhood is definitely, if you want to play that traditional Liberators with Judicators sort of thing, and really have that, standard sort of battle line formation. The Hammerstrike Force is really good. It makes you take the Prosecutors, which you maybe already wanted to take. They're not as much as incentive, but if you combine them with the 2 Paladin units you get in the battalion, it's a good way to do really elite forces, particularly if you want to, say, bring the Hammerstrike Force with big squads of Paladins and have your Lord, your Celestant Prime in reserve up there with them. And then you bring Prosecutors, and you have that 1 squad of Prosecutors mixed in amongst there from this battalion to just deliver it and let them pop them down really, really easy. There's all sorts of ways to do it, and they're definitely one of the most complicated ways in which for armies to build with, because they have so many options. The weaknesses of this army are something you're going to become very apparent with very shortly, though, when you go to start this. If you're building Redeemers, you're going to struggle with things that throw lots of attacks at you. You're going to struggle with things with high rend and lots of mortal wounds, and high multi-damage attacks. If you're bringing Sacrosanct, you're going to struggle with lots, and Redeemers, you're going to struggle with magic. If you're bringing Sacrosanct, you're not going to struggle with magic. You're going to be vulnerable to hordes, and your best chance is to sort of just build a brick wall around yourself with Sequitors. If you're bringing Vanguard, you're going to struggle with everything, but you're definitely going to rule the movement phase and be able to rack up objective points in games where you have to be mobile. And that's something that you just got to keep in mind. If you want to start a Stormcast army and you're looking for advice, ideas, anything, or you just want to discuss it, leave stuff in the comments below and we'll discuss it further. That's really all the time I have to talk about starting a Stormcast army and talking about them in general for what you want to really do with them. They're an interesting army with lots of potential for themed armies, and they're interesting because they have 3 separate armies that kind of work with each other, but work better when they're not with each other. But at the same time, after you've built one, the best thing to do is to grab the best bits and pieces of the other ones to support the one you've built. Alright, I have been Jay from Jade Productions, signing off.